Hello, and welcome to this presentation prepared by the curation team at the Federated Research Data Repository, or FRDR, a service of the Digital Research Alliance of Canada. In this session, we will share key principles for sharing research data in repositories like FRDR. Our objective is to support the research community in improving data sharing practices. The full presentation is available online. At the end, you'll find a QR code and a web link to access the slides in English and French, along with additional resources mentioned throughout the talk. Our agenda consists of 6 points. Why do we care about sharing data? Current issues with data. Principles of sharing data. General guidelines for dataset deposits. Data submission checklist. Canadian generalist repositories. Why should we share and reuse research data? There are several key reasons. First, data sharing helps prevent duplication of efforts. By reusing existing datasets, we can save time, reduce costs, and avoid repeating experiments unnecessarily. Second, sharing data promotes transparency and reproducibility. Independent researchers can validate findings by replicating the original workflows. In an era marked by concerns about research integrity and reproducibility, this is essential. Third, shared datasets can be used to explore new research questions or combined with other data to generate novel insights. They are also valuable resources for teaching and training, offering students and early career researchers the opportunity to work with real-world data. Finally, openly shared raw data supports large-scale analyses like meta-analyses, which rely on high-quality, reproducible research inputs. The Tri-Agency Research Data Management Policy. In Canada, research data sharing is supported by the Tri-Agency Research Data Management Policy. This policy reflects a commitment by the Government of Canada to strengthen research data management and promote data sharing, particularly for projects funded with public money. Its goal is to improve the return on investment in research by ensuring that data are preserved and made accessible for reuse without unnecessary restrictions. The policy encourages the development of data management plans, DMPs, and the deposit of data in trusted repositories. Over time, these practices are expected to become standard requirements across disciplines. Data sharing as a professional responsibility. While policies and mandates can motivate data sharing, they should not be the sole reason we share our research data. As researchers, we should view data sharing as a core professional and ethical responsibility, not just as a checkbox for grant applications or journal submissions, and certainly not simply because it's mandated by policymakers. Sharing data contributes directly to the advancement of open science. It increases the visibility and impact of our work, allows others to build upon it, and ensures that research outcomes extend beyond individual publications. Ultimately, data sharing is part of conducting responsible, transparent, and collaborative science. How research needs to evolve. To meet today's challenges and opportunities, research practices must evolve in 3 key ways. First, build competency in data management and analysis. Researchers need the skills to manage, document, and analyze data effectively. This includes understanding formats, metadata, documentation standards, and basic coding or scripting when applicable. Second, adopt standardized approaches for sharing data and code. Sharing raw data alongside the analysis code enhances transparency and reproducibility. Standardized methods make it easier for others to verify results and build upon them. Finally, foster a culture of transparency and best practices. We must promote a research culture that values openness, documentation, and reproducibility. This strengthens trust in science and ensures that research outputs remain useful and credible over time. Benefits for different stakeholders. Sharing well-managed research data provides significant benefits across the research ecosystem, with specific advantages for researchers, publishers, and funders. For researchers, data sharing increases efficiency. It reduces duplication of effort and makes it easier to build on existing work. Ease of resharing. Ensures availability for all lab members and community. Collaboration. Datasets become a foundation for new partnerships and interdisciplinary projects. Finally, reproducibility. Well-documented data allows others to validate findings and reinforce the integrity of scientific outputs. For publishers, open data contributes to rigor. By requiring that data be shared, publishers help ensure that research is based on transparent and verifiable evidence. Validation. Shared data allows reviewers and readers to assess the credibility of the work. Open science. This supports a broader cultural shift toward accessible and transparent research practices. Also, for funders, data sharing enhances transparency. Public access to data demonstrates how research funds are being used. Accountability. Funded researchers are responsible for making their results openly available. Return on investment. When data are reused and built upon, the impact of the original funding increases significantly. Now, let's explore some issues we have with data. Data could be in many places. In most research environments, data are stored across a wide range of locations, and often in an uncoordinated way. They might be found on the laptops of students or postdocs, making them vulnerable to loss or inaccessibility when people leave the lab. They could be saved within an institute's internal network, which may be secure but not always organized for long-term preservation or sharing. Some datasets are stored in cloud services, such as Google Drive or Dropbox. These platforms are convenient but not designed for structured research data management, and may lack clear ownership or metadata. Other data reside on high-performance computing, HPC, clusters, which support large-scale processing but don't always offer user-friendly interfaces for managing and sharing datasets. This fragmentation makes it difficult to track, curate, and preserve research data. That's why centralized, well-curated repositories play such an important role in ensuring long-term access and reuse. Data sharing promises versus reality. Although many research articles claim that data are available upon request, the reality often tells a different story. In practice, when researchers or reviewers attempt to access these datasets, the data frequently cannot be retrieved. There are several reasons for this. Poor data management. The data may be disorganized, stored on inaccessible devices, or simply lost over time. This includes loss of contact with the responsible. Lack of preparation. The data were never documented or formatted for sharing, making them unusable by others. Research misconduct. In some cases, the data never existed, and the claim of availability masks fraudulent practices. This disconnect between policy and practice highlights the need for proactive, transparent data sharing through trusted repositories and with appropriate documentation. Common issues in shared datasets. Even in the few cases where data are shared, either upon request or as supplementary material in publications, serious issues are common. The most frequent problems include missing or incomplete metadata. Without adequate context, it's impossible to understand how the data were generated or what the variables represent. No README file. Many datasets lack a simple text file describing the content, explaining how to use the data, the structure of the files, or the methodology behind them. Disorganized folder structures. Files are often scattered without logic and naming conventions, making it difficult to navigate, interpret, or reuse the dataset. Datasets treated as secondary. Too often, data are considered an appendix to the publication, rather than a standalone research output with its own value and lifecycle. Together, these issues make reuse difficult, if not impossible, and diminish the long-term utility of research data. Let's now review the general principles of sharing data. Treat data as an independent research output. A key priority in data sharing is to ensure that datasets are treated as independent, reusable research outputs, not as byproducts of a publication. This means that the dataset should be Clear. Others should be able to understand what the data represents without needing access to the original researchers. Organized. File structures, naming conventions, and folder hierarchies should be logical and easy to follow. Well documented. Context, methodology, and file contents must be explained in sufficient detail. To illustrate this need, many of us have experienced situations where we inherit data from a former student or colleague, only to find it impossible to interpret or reuse due to a lack of documentation or structure. By documenting and curating your data effectively, you make it possible for others and for your future self to understand and build upon your work. The FAIR principles. To ensure research data are properly shared and reused, they should follow the FAIR principles to make data findable. Use persistent identifiers, rich metadata, and ensure datasets are indexed in searchable repositories. Accessible. Use open file formats and specify any required software for accessing the data. Interoperable. Describe data using standardized formats and link to related metadata when relevant. Reusable. Provide detailed documentation, accurate descriptions, and a clear license outlining how the data can be used. Let's see the FAIR principles in practice by exploring some general guidelines for depositing datasets. 3 core principles for sharing data. When preparing a dataset for sharing, there are 3 essential practices that apply across disciplines. Provide a descriptive title, summary, and keywords. A dataset's title should clearly reflect its content, not the research article's title. For example, indicate the type of data, e.g., images, tables, DNA sequences, the subject, and other relevant details. Keywords and a concise summary help improve discoverability in repositories and search engines. Include a README file with metadata. Metadata is data about data. A README file should explain the context, collection methods, file contents, and how to work with the dataset. It is critical for helping others understand and reuse your data. Ensure logical structure and organization. Use clear folder hierarchies and descriptive, consistent file names. This helps users quickly grasp how the dataset is organized and how files relate to one another. These foundational elements significantly improve the chances that your data will be reused and understood. Datasets titles are essential. Let's look at real examples from FRDR to illustrate the importance of descriptive dataset titles. In the first case, the dataset was submitted under the name PyPaw 2.0, a name that gives little context. After curation, it was improved to reflect the dataset's nature and purpose. A more informative version might be Home Cage-based motor learning platform PyPaw 2.0. Even small changes in a title can significantly improve clarity and usefulness. In the second example, the addition of details like what was mapped and the technique used made the title much more meaningful and discoverable. A good title should communicate what the dataset is, how it was generated, and what it's about. You may not find the perfect title on your first try, but you can always aim for one that is clear, specific, and descriptive. This example reinforces a key idea. Specificity adds value. Including information such as the geographic location or study site makes the title more precise and immediately useful. For example, adding a location can help users quickly determine whether a dataset is relevant to their work, especially in fields like ecology, public health, or environmental science. Once again, remember, the title of your dataset is not the same as the title of your research article. A dataset title should focus on the content, format, and context of the data itself. Write a meaningful description. A good dataset description complements the title by providing additional detail about the dataset's contents, purpose, and structure. It should clearly state what the dataset includes. Describe how the data were generated or collected. Mention any methods or instruments used. And include relevant keywords to improve discoverability. In the example shown, the original description lacks context. It can be significantly improved by specifying what the data represent, how they were produced, and for what kind of research they might be useful. This example highlights how a weak description can be transformed into a highly informative one. The original version offers limited context. It briefly mentions the species and chemicals involved but lacks information on methods, data types, and potential reuse. The improved version adds scientific context about why the study matters, for instance, effects of neurochemicals in aquatic organisms. Details on experimental design, measured parameters, and methods used, like high-throughput assays and RNA sequencing. Specific types of data shared, including videos, gene sequences, R code, and .fasta files. And finally, keywords that enhance discoverability, such as serotonin, dopamine, GABA, and RNA sequencing. A relevant tip: use as many relevant keywords as possible. Think about what someone might type into a search field to find your dataset. Choosing effective keywords. Selecting the right keywords is essential to make your dataset discoverable in repositories and search engines. When deciding on keywords, ask yourself: what terms would someone use to search for this dataset? Think about the subject of the dataset. For example, rodent behavior or climate modeling. Also, in the methods used, such as RNA sequencing or satellite imagery. Include the data types. For instance, CSV tables or microscopy images. Finally, make reference to relevant locations, species, or systems involved in the research. Avoid overly broad or generic terms, and instead focus on specific, descriptive words that reflect the content and context of the data. The README file. The README file is one of the most important components of a dataset. It provides the essential information needed to understand, interpret, and reuse the data. There are many templates and community guidelines available to help structure a README file. While the format may vary, a good README file typically includes the same key elements, which we will explore on the next slide. What to include in a README file? A well-structured README file should contain the following elements. Dataset identifiers. Include the title of the dataset, the names of the authors or contributors, the dates of data collection, and any relevant geographic or contextual information. This establishes the identity of the dataset. File and folder map. Describe how the dataset is organized. Outline the folder structure, list the files included, and explain any naming conventions used. This helps others understand how to navigate the data. Methodological information. Provide a summary of how the data were collected or generated. Mention tools, instruments, or protocols used, along with relevant experimental conditions. Remember, the README should allow the dataset to stand alone, it should not rely on the associated publication for key details. Instructions and software requirements. Let users know how to access and work with the files. If specific software or code is needed, list it and include any version requirements. Finally, sharing and access information. Clearly state the licensing terms and conditions for reuse. Indicate whether the dataset is openly available or has restrictions. We recommend using a Creative Commons (CC BY) license for broad reuse. Define the structure of your dataset. To support reuse, your dataset should be clearly and logically structured, ideally from the very beginning of the project. Think of your dataset as a matryoshka doll, where folders are nested inside one another in a meaningful way. Each level should add context and help the user understand how the data are organized. Surprisingly, this is often overlooked. In practice, many datasets are submitted with confusing or inconsistent folder structures, making them hard to interpret or reuse. Start structuring your dataset early, but it's never too late. Ideally, you should design your dataset structure at the start of a project, but if that wasn't done, restructuring it midway or even at the end is still worthwhile. Here are key elements to consider. Folder structure. Organize data logically. For example, create separate folders for raw data, process data, documentation, and analysis scripts. Group related files together and avoid clutter. File formats. Choose formats that are open and widely supported. For example, use CSV instead of Excel for tabular data, or TIFF instead of proprietary image formats like .xi. Open formats support long-term access and reuse. Naming conventions. Use descriptive and consistent names for files and folders. Avoid vague labels like data_final2.xlsx. Instead, use names that clearly describe the content or version. The goal is to help others, and yourself, quickly understand the dataset structure and contents, even years later. We'll now look at tools and models that can guide this process. The tier protocol as a guiding framework. There's no one-size-fits-all rule for organizing a dataset. It depends on the content, discipline, and research context. However, frameworks like the tier protocol offer a solid starting point. TIER stands for transparency, interpretability, ease of access, and reusability. It provides a flexible structure that can be simplified or expanded based on your specific needs. On the right, you can see an example of a clean, organized dataset structure based on this protocol. It clearly separates raw data, process data, scripts, documentation, and results, each in its own dedicated folder. On the left, you have a link to download the template. What should a dataset contain? As depicted by the Tier 4.0 template, a well-prepared dataset typically includes several core components. Raw data. These are the original, unmodified files generated by instruments or collected during experiments. Intermediate and analysis data. These are the cleaned, transformed, or filtered datasets used for analysis. They represent the bridge between raw data and results. Processing and analysis scripts. Code or scripts that document how the data were cleaned, processed, or analyzed. These are essential for reproducibility. Output/results. Final outputs, such as graphs, summary tables, or statistical results, typically generated from analysis scripts. README files and codebooks. These provide context and documentation. The README explains the dataset structure, and codebooks describe variables, formats, and metadata. For more guidance on organizing files, you can explore the linked resource shown on the slide. Beware of poorly formatted tables. Although spreadsheets like Excel, .xls, .xlsx are widely used in research, they often result in poorly structured and unusable tables. In fact, tables are among the most problematic data objects in research due to formatting issues such as merged cells that confuse parsing tools and make automation difficult, inconsistent structures where multiple variables are crammed into a single column or row, mixed content, such as tables combined with graphs, formatting, or commentary. These issues make data hard to clean, validate, reuse, or preserve. Unfortunately, they're common, especially in supplementary materials of research articles. Good data practices start with structure. If your tables are not machine-readable and logically organized, they lose much of their value for others, and for future you. Share tidy formatted tables. To support reuse and reproducibility, share your data in tidy table format. This means organizing data so that each column represents a single variable. Each row represents a single observation. And each value is clearly placed in its own cell. In the example shown, the table follows a long format with identifier variables such as mouse ID, condition, and time point, to help distinguish each experimental unit. Analysis variables include counts of specific cell types used for interpretation. Also, derived variables, created during data processing, like ratios or proportions, are clearly labeled and separated. This structure ensures that data are machine-readable. Files can be easily imported into analysis tools, and the dataset can be reused without confusion. Avoid mixing multiple types of information in the same cell or formatting your table visually. Instead, think in terms of data logic and clarity. Coding is essential in research. To ensure transparency and reproducibility, it's not enough to share data alone, you also need to share the code used to transform and analyze it. This includes scripts used for data cleaning and formatting, merging datasets, and generating figures or statistical results. The code helps documenting the logic behind your results. It allows others to replicate your steps and understand how raw data were transformed into final outputs. Think of coding as a core research skill, just like experimental design or statistics. Languages like R and Python are widely used, and modern tools, including AI assistants, make coding more accessible than ever before. Do not forget that logical naming conventions are the key to linking the files in your dataset, including the raw data, processing scripts, and analysis data. Now, let's verify the essential elements a dataset must contain before submission. A checklist for submitting data. When you're ready to submit your dataset to a repository like FRDR, ensure it is well prepared for reuse by others. Here's a quick checklist to guide you. Folders and files are organized. Use a clear and logical structure. Align it with community standards when possible, or at least with common sense. Files contain consistent and descriptive naming conventions. Ensure that anyone looking at your dataset can understand what each file is and how it fits into the larger structure. You have prioritized open file formats. Choose formats that are widely accessible and support long-term preservation, such as CSV for tabular data or TIFF for images. Documentation is sufficient. Include a detailed README file, relevant metadata, and any codebooks needed to understand and reuse the data. By following these steps, you not only comply with best practices, you also increase the visibility, impact, and reproducibility of your work. Frequently asked questions about data sharing. Here are common questions researchers often ask. 1. When should I start organizing my data for sharing? The earlier, the better. Don't wait until the end of a multi-year project to impose structure. Start organizing as you collect the data. This prevents confusion, saves time, and improves data quality. 2. When can I share my data? At any point in the research process. Data can be shared during ongoing projects, at the time of publication, or even afterward, as long as it's properly documented and structured. 3. What if my dataset doesn't fit a protocol like TIR? That's okay. Protocols are guides, not rigid rules. The key is to create a logical structure and provide sufficient documentation so others can understand and reuse your data. 4. Is my dataset citable? Yes. When you deposit your dataset in a trusted repository like FRDR or Borealis, it receives a Digital Object Identifier (DOI). This makes your dataset a citable, standalone research output. You can even cite the dataset in your article, especially if it's deposited before publication. 5. How can others use my dataset? That depends on the license you choose. We recommend the Creative Commons Attribution 4.0, CC by 4.0, license. It allows broad reuse while requiring proper attribution. 6. Where can I share my data? You can deposit your data in either specialized repositories, tailored to your discipline, or in generalist repositories like FRDR, which supports curated, large-scale, multidisciplinary datasets. Or Borealis, based on the Dataverse platform, and hosted by Canadian university libraries. We'll take a closer look at both in the next slides. In summary, data first. A dataset is not just supporting material, it is an independent research output. It can and should be used independently of the research article, cited independently, with its own DOI, and valued independently, as a contribution to science. In fact, a shift in mindset is needed. Instead of thinking of data as a supplement to your article, think of the article as a supplement to your dataset. Let's now explore the fundamental characteristics of the two main Canadian generalist repositories. The Federated Research Data Repository, FRDR. This is a national platform designed to help Canadian researchers discover, store, and share research data. Our key goals are: improve data discoverability, working in partnership with services like Lunaris. Promote open science practices by supporting the reuse of research data. And ensure the long-term preservation of valuable research outputs. FRDR is open to researchers across Canada and supports a wide range of disciplines and data types. Whether you're working in engineering, life sciences, social sciences, or the humanities, FRDR provides the infrastructure you need for robust data sharing. Benefits of using FRDR. By submitting your data to FRDR, you benefit from a platform designed to support both researchers and institutions. Here's what FRDR offers: long-term preservation, accessibility, and usability of datasets, thanks to a dedicated curation and preservation team. Support for meeting funder requirements, including those related to open access and the creation of research data management plans. The ability to host large datasets, making FRDR ideal for data-intensive projects that may exceed the limits of other platforms. Expert guidance on data management best practices to help make your dataset more fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. FRDR staff work directly with researchers to ensure that data are well structured, properly documented, and ready for discovery and reuse. Borealis is a Canadian research data repository supported by academic libraries, research institutions, and the Digital Research Alliance of Canada. It offers a user-friendly and collaborative environment for sharing datasets, and includes several key features. Built on Dataverse open-source software, hosted by Scholars Portal and the University of Toronto Libraries. Single sign-on access for Canadian researchers, integrated through the Canadian Access Federation. Indexed for discovery in major services like DataCite, Google Dataset Search, and Lunaris, making your data easier to find and cite. Borealis is particularly well-suited for institutions looking for decentralized management of research data, supported by librarians and local administrators. Borealis Network in Canada. This map shows the institutional distribution of the Borealis Network across Canada. Each point represents a participating academic institution that has integrated Borealis into its research data services. The broad coverage reflects Borealis' national reach and decentralized model, where institutions manage their own collections within a shared infrastructure. This structure enables local support, while still maintaining high standards for metadata, discoverability, and long-term access through national coordination. If your institution is part of the Borealis network, you likely already have access to its services, and local librarians who can support you. In Borealis, datasets are organized into collections and subcollections that reflect institutional and research group structures. Each institution or group has a top-level collection, which serves as the main container for its datasets. Datasets are deposited directly into these collections, or into subcollections created for specific labs, departments, or research units. Some institutions allow individual researchers or teams to manage their own subcollections, offering greater control and flexibility. Borealis offers a set of integrated tools that enhance the usability and exploration of research data. File Preview. This feature allows users to explore certain file types directly in the browser, allowing the users to assess whether a dataset is relevant to their needs. Data Explorer Tool. You can interactively browse and visualize tabular data from formats like SPSS, Excel, and CSV. GitHub Integration. Borealis supports GitHub Actions, enabling researchers to link their datasets with version-controlled code repositories. This is particularly useful for workflows that combine data with reproducible scripts. Accessing FRDR and Borealis. You can visit the official websites for both repositories. FRDR, www.frdr-dfdr.ca, and Borealis, www.borealisdata.ca. Both repositories are supported by the Digital Research Alliance of Canada, and both align with FAIR principles and open science best practices. Choose the one that best fits your project's needs. Resources and support. To help you prepare and share your research data effectively, several resources and support services are available. FRDR documentation. Guidance on how to deposit, curate, and manage your data in the FRDR platform. Borealis User Guide. Instructions on using Borealis, from dataset creation to publication. Training resources from the Digital Research Alliance of Canada. Workshops, videos, and materials to build your data management skills. This presentation is also available online in both English and French. You can scan the QR code or use the provided link. If you need help, reach out to us directly. Email rdm-gdr@alliancecan.ca or the website www.frdr-dfdr.ca. Our team can guide you through the process of organizing, documenting, and publishing your dataset, ensuring it meets best practices and reaches the wider research community.